The first time my sister talked about my inheritance, she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a loving one. The kind of smile people give when they believe they already own something that doesn't belong to them yet. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about family. This was about power. My name is Alex Morgan. I'm 29 years old, and until recently, I believed silence was the safest way to survive in a family that never truly listened. Growing up, my sister Rachel was always the center of everything. If she spoke, people stopped talking. If she cried, the world paused. If she wanted something, it became urgent. I was the opposite, the child who adapted, the one who stayed quiet, the one who learned early that being low maintenance meant being invisible. Our parents used to say, Rachel is strong, Alex is understanding. What they really meant was, Rachel takes, Alex accepts. I learned how to disappear without leaving the room. At dinner, I listened. At arguments, I stepped back. At celebrations, I clapped quietly. And somehow, that became my role. The only person who never treated me that way was my grandfather. He didn't speak loudly, he didn't demand attention, but when he looked at you, you felt seen. He used to say, Alex, watch carefully. People reveal themselves when money is involved. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I was about to. When he passed away, our family gathered like actors rehearsing grief. Tears on cue, hugs for the audience. Whispers in corners. Rachel cried the loudest, so loudly that strangers came up to comfort her. She leaned into it. She always did. I stood near the back, quiet, watching, and I noticed something strange. Every time someone mentioned Grandpa's estate, Rachel's crying stopped. Just for a second, her eyes sharpened, like she was counting. A week after the funeral, she showed up at my apartment, unannounced. She brought coffee, my favorite kind. That should have felt kind. Instead, it felt calculated. She sat down, crossed her legs, and looked around my small living space. "You're doing okay," she said, not asking, judging. Then she leaned forward and said it. "You know, Grandpa trusted me a lot." My chest tightened. Not because it was true, but because of why she was saying it. She explained that there was paperwork, legal things, complicated things. She said she had already spoken to someone, a lawyer. She said she could handle everything for me because, according to her, "You're not good with stress, Alex. Let me take care of it." That sentence hit harder than any insult she'd ever thrown at me because it wasn't said with cruelty. It was said with confidence, the confidence of someone who believes you won't resist. I asked her about the will. She paused, just long enough. "There are some documents," she said, "but honestly, it's better if we simplify things." Simplify, another word people use when they want control. Over the next few days, Rachel became unusually present in my life. Texts every morning, calls every evening. She asked about my finances, my debts, my plans. She suggested I let her temporarily manage things, just until everything was settled. She even said this, "If we do this cleanly, no one gets hurt. No one, except me." That night, I couldn't sleep. My grandfather's words echoed in my head. People reveal themselves when money is involved. So for the first time in my life, I didn't stay quiet. I started paying attention. I visited my grandfather's old house. It was empty, too empty, like someone had already taken what mattered. But in his study, I noticed something. The desk drawer didn't sit right. Behind it, taped carefully, was an envelope, yellowed, dusty, with my name written in his handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were copies, bank references, trust notes, legal explanations, and one clear instruction. This inheritance is for Alex alone. I sat down on the floor, because suddenly everything made sense. Why Rachel was rushing, why she wanted signatures, why she kept saying, "Trust me." She wasn't helping me, she was trying to erase me. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was security, freedom, a future, everything I'd never been allowed to have. The next morning, Rachel called again, cheerful, almost excited. I found a lawyer, she said. We should meet and sign some papers. I said yes. Because sometimes the best way to expose manipulation is to let the manipulator believe they're in control. I spent the next few days preparing, quietly. I requested official records, I scanned documents, I spoke to someone my grandfather trusted. Each step revealed more, and each revelation made my stomach turn. Rachel hadn't just planned to manage the inheritance, she planned to absorb it, blend it, distribute it as she saw fit, with herself at the center. I remembered every time she spoke over me, every time my parents sided with her, every time I was told to let it go. They hadn't just underestimated me, they had trained me to stay silent. But silence has a limit, and mine had finally reached it. The day of the meeting arrived. Rachel walked in confident, relaxed. She brought documents already clipped, tabs marked. She smiled at the lawyer like she owned the room. She slid the papers toward me. "Just sign here," she said casually. "I've already explained everything." I picked up the pen, and that's when I realized something powerful. For the first time in my life, she was nervous, just slightly, because deep down she sensed it. Something had changed. I didn't sign. Not yet. I asked questions, simple ones, and with each question, her smile tightened. Because liars hate questions, especially calm ones. I watched her carefully. The impatience, the interruptions, the subtle pressure. She wasn't used to resistance, not from me. That's when I knew. Her plan wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. And she had no idea how badly she'd underestimated me. I smiled back at her and said, "Let me think about it." Her confidence flickered, just for a moment. But it was enough, because the truth was already in my hands. And once the truth comes out, it doesn't just stop a plan, it collapses everything built on lies. She thought this meeting would end with my signature. She was wrong. It was the beginning of her downfall. The moment I walked out of that office without signing anything, I felt something I had never felt before. Control. Not over Rachel, over myself. She followed me to the parking lot, still smiling. But her voice was tighter now. "You're overthinking," she said. "Lawyers make things sound complicated." I nodded, didn't argue, because arguing would have warned her, and I didn't want her alert. Not yet. That night, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls, messages, missed calls, Rachel, then my mother, then my father. A coordinated panic. My mother's message was short. "Why are you making things difficult?" That sentence alone told me everything. They already knew. This wasn't just Rachel's plan. It never had been. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the folder my grandfather had left behind, and I started reading everything, slowly, carefully, like my future depended on it, because it did. The more I read, the clearer it became. The inheritance wasn't small. It wasn't symbolic. It was enough to change my life, enough to finally step out of the shadow I'd lived in for nearly 3 decades, and that terrified them. I contacted the number written on one of the documents, an old legal associate of my grandfather, a man who sounded surprised to hear my voice. "You were supposed to get all of it," he said. Just like that, no hesitation, no doubt. He told me something that made my hands go cold. Rachel had contacted him weeks earlier, pretending to represent both of us, claiming I had given verbal consent. She hadn't just planned to control the inheritance, she had already started moving it. Forgery, misrepresentation, intent, words that turn family drama into crime. I asked him one question. Did she succeed? He paused. "No," he said, "because the final approval requires your signature." I exhaled slowly. That one missing signature was the only thing standing between her and everything. The next day, my parents invited me over. Urgent, concerned. I almost laughed. Concern had never required urgency before. Their house felt different, smaller, like the walls were listening. Rachel was already there, sitting straight, hands folded, practicing innocence. My father spoke first. "Rachel is only trying to help," he said. "You're being suspicious for no reason." There it was, the pattern. Minimize, dismiss, control. Rachel added softly, "We're family, Alex. Why would I hurt you?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear behind her eyes. I asked a simple question. "Why did you contact Grandpa's lawyer without telling me?" Silence, a sharp one. Rachel looked at my parents. They looked back at her. That was the moment I knew. They had rehearsed many lies, but not for that question. My mother stepped in quickly. "We were just trying to protect you from stress." Protect. Another word people use to justify theft. I nodded again, played my role. "I just need time," I said. Time was the last thing they wanted me to have. That night, the pressure increased. Relatives started calling. Uncles, aunts, cousins, all saying the same thing. "Don't break the family. Rachel knows better. You're being selfish." Selfish for wanting what was legally mine? That's when I understood something important. Rachel hadn't just built a plan, she had built a narrative. And narratives are powerful, unless you replace them with facts. I hired my own lawyer, quietly, a woman who didn't care about family politics, only documents, only truth. She reviewed everything, the will, the trust structure, the attempted transfers. And then she looked at me and said, "They didn't expect you to fight back, did they?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "They trained me not to." We began collecting evidence, email trails, call logs, witness statements. Every step Rachel took without my consent became another nail. Then came the mistake, the one that changed everything. Rachel sent me an email, trying to pressure me, threatening gently. "If you don't sign, things could get messy." That email was gold, intent, in writing. When my lawyer read it, she smiled. "That," she said, "is not concern, that's coercion." I stopped answering calls completely. Silence drives manipulators insane because they need reaction, they need reassurance, they need control. Rachel showed up at my apartment, unannounced, angry now, the mask slipping. "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "Everything. Not the family. Everything." I looked at her calmly. "For who?" I asked. She didn't answer, because she couldn't. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This was about exposure. And exposure was inevitable. She thought I was delaying. She thought I was scared. She thought I'd eventually give in. She was wrong. Because while she was panicking, I was preparing. And the truth doesn't need permission. It only needs the right moment. And that moment was coming. Very soon. The first legal notice didn't arrive with drama. No shouting, no confrontation, just an envelope. Thick, official, unavoidable. And the moment it landed on my parents' dining table, everything they had built on silence began to crack. My mother called first. Not angry, not crying, soft. Too soft. "Alex, we need to talk," she said. "You've taken this too far." Too far? As if the line hadn't already been crossed the moment they tried to take what was mine. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the second notice go out, addressed directly to Rachel. Her name, her actions, her signatures, spelled out in black and white. That's when the panic became visible. She started posting online, family photos, old memories, captions about love and togetherness. People who are innocent don't rush to control the story. People who are afraid do. Then came the family meeting, an emergency they called it. Everyone invited. Aunts, uncles, cousins, witnesses. They wanted pressure. They got exposure. We sat in a living room that suddenly felt too small. Rachel sat beside my mother, hands clenched, jaw tight. My father paced. He couldn't sit still, because lies don't like waiting. They spoke first, about unity, about misunderstandings, about how money ruins families. Interesting, considering money had only ever ruined me. Then Rachel stood up, tears ready, voice shaking perfectly. She said she had only tried to help, that I was confused, that lawyers had poisoned my mind. Every sentence was rehearsed. Every pause intentional. People nodded. Sympathy moved fast, because emotion always moves faster than facts. Then I spoke, calm, slow. I didn't accuse, I asked questions, simple ones. Questions liars hate. Why did you contact Grandpa's lawyer without my consent? Silence. Rachel looked at my mother. My mother looked away. Why did you ask me to sign documents that transferred sole authority to you? Rachel's tears stopped. Just like that. And why, I continued, did you threaten me by email when I refused? Gasps. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Because now it wasn't emotion. It was evidence. I placed copies on the table. Emails, timelines, legal explanations. No yelling, no insults. Just truth. My aunt whispered, "Rachel, is this true?" Rachel didn't answer. She couldn't, because denial would have required lies she couldn't prove. My mother exploded. She shouted, accused me of betrayal, of greed, of destroying the family. And then she said the sentence that ended everything. We did what we had to do. The room froze. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood it. That wasn't defense. That was confession. My father tried to recover, tried to talk over it, but it was too late. The narrative had shifted, and once it shifts, you can't force it back. Rachel left the room, crying, not from guilt, from exposure, because for the first time in her life, people weren't choosing her side automatically. Within days, the story spread, not as gossip, as fact. Relatives stopped calling me. They started calling them, asking questions, demanding explanations. Rachel tried one last move. She offered a settlement, a portion, quiet money, in exchange for silence. I refused, because silence was what created this mess. The final legal filing went in that week. Full disclosure, full evidence. No room left to negotiate. When the court date was set, my parents stopped calling. Rachel blocked me. But it didn't matter, because control had finally left their hands. The day before the hearing, my father came alone. He looked tired, defeated. He asked me to drop it, for the family. I looked at him and said the truth. There was never a family for me to protect. He had no answer, because deep down, he knew it was true. By the time we walked into that courtroom, this was no longer about inheritance. It was about accountability, and accountability doesn't care who raised you. Rachel sat across from me, not smiling, not confident, just exposed. Because plans built on manipulation collapse the moment someone stops playing their role, and I had finally stopped. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not because of the air, because there was no warmth left between us. We sat on opposite sides. No eye contact, no family, just consequences. Rachel looked different. No confidence, no practiced tears, just someone realizing that charm doesn't work on facts. The judge spoke slowly, carefully, as if every word carried weight, because it did. The inheritance was never in question. The will was clear. The intent was clear. What mattered now was behavior, and the behavior had been documented. Emails, timelines, witness statements, attempts to coerce, attempts to misrepresent, attempts to control. The ruling came without hesitation. The inheritance belonged to me, solely. No shared authority, no management rights for Rachel, nothing. But it didn't stop there. The court addressed her actions: intent to deceive, breach of trust, undue influence. She wasn't punished out of cruelty, she was held accountable. My parents tried to speak. The judge stopped them. "This is not about feelings," he said. "This is about responsibility." I had never heard anyone say that to them before. Rachel cried. Real tears this time. Because there was no one left to protect her. No one left to speak for her. The courtroom emptied. People walked past us. Strangers again. That's how fast family can become history. Outside, my mother reached for me. I stepped back. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. The money came later, quietly, cleanly. But the real reward wasn't financial. It was freedom. I moved, started fresh, used the inheritance the way my grandfather intended: education, stability, peace. Rachel disappeared from my life. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like someone whose power depends on attention. My parents tried to rebuild their image. Some people believed them, some didn't. It no longer mattered. I stopped being the quiet one, not because I became loud, but because I stopped disappearing. Moral: the people who try to take what's yours usually rely on your silence. The moment you stop staying quiet, their plan collapses.